Do you think Emma is completely a product of her upbringing, or was there always something in her that was kind of psycho?
I think it's a combination. Personally, I think reality is real people are, and that's what's great about the show. Everyone is, for the most part, very human, very real. Excuse me, I totally just did too. The way that I think about Emma and the background that I worked on as an actor is, I think she is a sociopath, not a psychopath. She's not impulsive. She has no predilection for violence. She does it because Joe tells her to, but what she does is she lacks empathy. She's callous. I did a lot of really interesting research on the childhood diagnosis for kids that do generally grow into psychopaths and sociopaths, which is callous, unemotional children, and like how they manipulate each other and like what the young girls are like. It's totally fascinating. And I think that's what Emma was, but she was also under the boot of a psychologically abusive mother who, I think there were some sort of dark allusions in season 1 to, when she had the conversation with Parker about all the men coming in and out of her mother's house, there's stuff there in terms of abuse, but she was targeted at the age of 15 by a manipulative genius who programmed her and trained her in his likeness. She's his protege, and he targeted her for that reason. He saw that in her, and so it's both. I wonder. I was having a conversation with another actor about this recently. Like, if she hadn't met Joe, who would she be? All these characters. Like, who would they be if they hadn't met Joe? It's like I still think she would be a very antisocial, very abrasive, very cold person. Probably some, really successful book editor or like professor or something literary. But she's still living alone in her apartment.
After playing this character, did you start analyzing people with the behavior of your character to see?
You mean, did I see them through Emma's eyes, or did I start to look at people and see whether or not they were a little off? No, I guess not, because I view Emma very sympathetically. I see her very much as a victim of Joe Carroll. So I think that's what I see in other people. I'm not scared of other people. It's more like looking at vulnerability. I see her as just being very vulnerable that way. And Emma doesn't really notice other people that much, except for Joe Carroll. Everybody else is just kind of incidental or interlopers. So
what was interesting is how she manipulated the men around her. And she was kind of like, almost really like the alpha. And when they were all in the house, it was like, she was using whatever way to get these guys to do what ultimately Joe wanted them to do. So, talk about that aspect of her, that even though she was a victim, she certainly wasn't a victim in that sense.
No, I mean a victim in terms of the programming, the taking away of her life, right. Her giving her life to Joe, but no, she's not a victim in that sense. It was an interesting change, an interesting arc that happened for her last season, because for those first 5 episodes, she was in the house of the guys who she'd known for years. She understood more than anyone else, I think, how that power struggle worked, and you got to see her take all these different avenues for manipulating them, whether it was violence or sex or vulnerability. And then you saw her thrown into a pool with a bunch of new people at the mansion who she didn't know, who didn't care about her, and she got kicked around a lot the second half of the season, when she doesn't know her way around people's heads.
So was it the chance to do a nice, light romantic comedy that attracted you to this role? Or?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But, that is the thing about Emma, and I think it's why people think that she's such a disturbing character, and it must be disturbing to play her or to take her home. But, that's the question I would ask James, honestly, just because everything Emma does comes from a place of light. It comes from a place of love. And yes, it's sick and twisted love from the objective perspective, but it's all she knows. And everything she does is for that love and for that devotion. And at heart, it's like, it's such a vulnerability. And she'll commit monstrous acts for it, but it's not with monstrous intent. It's like, James talks a lot about Joe having that black soul. Like, he's truly just evil at heart. And I don't see her that way at all. She doesn't. There's no hatred in her. There's no particular enjoyment of the killing or of the violence. it's pretty mundane. And I think maybe that's what's scary.
Right.
You know, the banality of evil, as somebody put it.
Sure.
It's scarier than a villain who takes such obvious pleasure in the violence.
Let's slip about season 2, if anything.
Well, I have blonde hair today. That's about all I can say.
She just seems like the
because
perfect
it's
person
visible.
to help Joe Carroll play dead. So like,
Yeah, I mean, I obviously can't say anything, but I think what you could see, hopefully, you could see in the finale is Emma believed he was dead and believes he's dead, and that's the world that she lives in, or has lived in that last year, is being on her own, and she's never existed without that purpose of him. So she's having to find her purpose, and whether or not there's even room for that when she's living day to day, just trying to survive with the most visible face of the cult and the FBI trying to track her every move. So Emma's been stripped of everything in season 2. She's stripped of the cult, she's stripped of Joe, she's stripped of her purpose. She doesn't know who she is anymore, or what she's doing, or why she's doing it. So we're going to see what comes out of that vacuum, what comes out of that space. Like,
what was the audition process like for playing this character? Is so intense. What did you have to bring to the table to land the role?
Honestly, the audition for myself and for Aiden and Nico, we had a couple of dummy scenes that we all tested with, and it was very open. Basically, the only thing it indicated was that she was the alpha. She was bossing these guys around. That's kind of all, and I knew that she was on the cold side, but that's all it gave me. And I had the opportunity to create the character with the, callous, unemotional upbringing and whatnot, and I had to sort of bring that to the table and her banality. And I guess it was that in the package of the most innocent-looking girl in the room that got me there. And there was also a scene with Joey, and it was to, I think, really show that she did love him and that she truly cared for him, how nurturing she could be in order to have an actress who could have that flip and really surprise the audience. But I didn't really know anything, and I didn't know how much she was going to factor into the story. I didn't know how big of a role she was going to play in the cult. I had no idea where things were going. I just kind of knew who she was within these 2 scenes and got to create that.